They were just little children no older than 4 or 5 years old. 10 smiling faces, filled with wonder and innocence. Tiny hands clutching lunch boxes, lovingly packed from home, backpacks adorned with colorful cartoon characters bouncing. On their backs, that morning, they set off on what was supposed to be a simple field trip, a day filled with laughter, discovery, chasing butterflies, and learning about trees. But as the sun dipped behind the forest and the sky turned gold, not one child came back. No footsteps in the soil. No cries in the distance, no clue, no trace. Just a silent, empty school bus parked at the edge of the trail, its doors wide open, swinging in the breeze, as if whatever had taken them hadn't cared to close it behind. For weeks, the search effort was massive. Rescue teams combed through the woods, dogs sniffed tirelessly, drones scanned from above, and hundreds of volunteers walked every possible path, but it was as if the forest had swallowed the children whole. The trees held their breath, the earth gave up nothing. Until today, a lone hiker, wandering far off trail, noticed something unusual. High in a tree, tangled between the branches, was a child's backpack, faded pink, torn at the edges. It swayed gently in the wind like a forgotten flag. A name tag dangled from the zipper, Ali Ramirez. Below it, a strange clearing opened. In the forest floor, everything was unnaturally still. No birds, no insects, no breeze. Just a silence so heavy it pressed against the hiker's chest. There, on the mossy ground, were 7 small pairs of shoes, neatly lined up in a perfect curve, clean and touched, placed deliberately, as if waiting for someone to find them. And in the center of the clearing, a tightly woven circle of sticks, like a nest, surrounded by strange markings no one could recognize. Symbols that seemed too precise to be random, yet too foreign to understand. The hiker stood frozen. Then, a sound, a giggle, but not a playful one, distorted, wrong. Soft, but close. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a forest or anywhere. For the first time since the children vanished, the woods whispered something back. Brookfield Academy wasn't the kind of school that made headlines. It was a quiet, highly respected private kindergarten tucked at the edge of a sleepy New England town. The kind of place where everyone knew the teachers by name, and parents never thought twice about safety. The school had been around for decades, founded by a retired educator who believed that children learned best when surrounded by calm, nature, and genuine care. No more than 50 students were enrolled each year. The classrooms were bright, the staff experienced, and the atmosphere always peaceful. Everyone in town trusted Brookfield until that day. It was the morning of May 4th, 2010, a clear, sunny Tuesday. Miss Danielle Wells, the lead teacher of the Buttercup class, stood at the school's old arched entrance, clipboard in hand, checking names and giving cheerful nods. 10 little ones present and accounted for. Their backpacks bounced happily behind them as they lined up for their outdoor adventure, filled with juice boxes, sandwiches, and hand wipes. It was a day like any other, until it became the last anyone would see of them. Extra socks, juice boxes, and peanut butter sandwiches wrapped in foil, the kind of things you'd expect on a field trip day. Everything about that morning felt safe, simple, and prepared. Standing beside Miss Wells at the school entrance was Mr. Gregory Hensley, a calm, soft-spoken science teacher in his early 50s. He was known for his quiet passion for nature and had led more outdoor class excursions than anyone else at the school. He had a reputation for being dependable, the kind of teacher who always had a plan, a backup plan, and band-aids in his back pocket just in case. Also joining them was Gina Matz, a volunteer parent and the mother of little Anna, one of the more curious and adventurous girls in the Buttercup class. Gina had volunteered last minute to help chaperone the kids. No one knew then how important that decision would become. Their destination, Larkwood Nature Preserve. Just a 40-minute ride from Brookfield Academy, it was a peaceful stretch of forestland, frequented by school groups, hikers, and birdwatchers. It wasn't the kind of place anyone thought of as dangerous. Larkwood had marked trails, wooden signs, informational maps, even a ranger station near the main entrance. It was considered safe, accessible, perfect for kids. The day's itinerary was straightforward: a gentle 2-mile walk along the Willow Ridge Trail, followed by lunch near the creek and a short hands-on lesson on identifying trees. Permission slips had been sent. Parents gave hugs, waved goodbye. The kids were bubbling with excitement. It was just another happy school day with backpacks instead of books. At exactly 9:20 a.m., the bright yellow school bus rolled out of the Brookfield parking lot, carrying 10 children, 2 teachers, and 1 parent volunteer. The weather was perfect, mid-60s, a soft breeze, and golden sunlight filtering through the trees. Ideal for a walk in the woods. Upon arrival, the group checked in at the trailhead. Mr. Hensley signed the guest book with his familiar tidy handwriting: Brookfield Academy, Buttercup Class. The timestamp read 9:57 a.m. By 10 a.m., the group had entered the woods. Miss Wells carried a whistle, a small first aid kit, and hand sanitizer. Mr. Hensley had the trail map folded neatly in his hand, a compass clipped to his vest, and decades of familiarity with this preserve. He hiked these woods since he was a teenager. He knew every curve in the trail, every fork, every tree that leaned just slightly too far. But around 10:20 a.m., something subtle shifted, something no one noticed at the time. The signal bars on their phones vanished. There was no reception deep in the preserve, especially near the shaded Creek Valley. It was mentioned in the guide. It was expected. No one was worried. After all, they had maps. And they had Mr. Hensley, who had never once lost his way. According to the schedule, the group should have been finishing lunch near the creek by noon, but no one ever saw them arrive. No one noticed anything strange. The preserve wasn't particularly crowded that day. Another class from a local middle school had passed through earlier. Some recalled faint sounds in the distance, childish laughter, maybe singing, but there were no screams, no shouting, no calls for help, just the sound of wind rustling through the leaves, a hush that had settled over the trees and stayed there, lingering far too long. And then the time crept past 3:30 p.m. That's when everything started to unravel. The school bus supposed to return by 2:45 p.m. never showed up. When the school bus didn't return by 2:45 p.m., there was confusion, then worrying. At first, the school staff made routine calls. They tried reaching both Miss Wells and Mr. Hensley, but their phones rang once, then straight to voicemail. Parents waiting in the pickup lane began checking the time more often, then whispering among themselves. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to panic. By 4:10 p.m., Brookfield Academy contacted local authorities. 25 minutes later, at 4:45, a park ranger was dispatched to the Willow Ridge Trail. He moved quickly, retracing the loop, calling out into the silence, but there was nothing, no sounds, no sights, no children, no adults. And by the time the sun dipped below the trees, the trailhead was swarming with flashing red and blue lights. Officers from the county sheriff's department, canine units, search and rescue volunteers, and aerial drones armed with thermal scanners all arrived. They searched methodically, grid by grid. The dogs sniffed the air and circled endlessly. Helicopters hovered overhead, spotting nothing but the dark canopy of treetops. No backpacks, no discarded lunchboxes, no signs of a struggle. Not a single broken branch. It was as if the entire group had vanished, swallowed by the woods without leaving a single trace. The only thing they did find was a line in the trailhead guest book, still visible in Mr. Hensley's familiar script: Brookfield Academy, Buttercup Class, written in neat cursive just before they began their walk. But there was no exit entry, no return signature, no confirmation they'd ever come back out. And so began a nightmare that would consume the town, spark national headlines, and haunt every parent for years to come. A field trip just like thousands that happen every year had turned into the unthinkable: 10 children, 2 adults, gone without a trace. In the beginning, news outlets treated it like a tragic misstep. Maybe the group got lost, maybe they wandered off trail and couldn't find their way back. But nothing made sense. Larkwood Nature Reserve wasn't dangerous. It was a modest patch of protected forest just an hour outside the city. Known for scenic views, birdwatching, and family hikes, not disappearances. That morning had started like any other. Two yellow school buses pulled into the dusty parking lot just after 9 a.m. Children tumbled out, laughing, holding hands, buzzing with excitement for a day outdoors. It was the kind of moment teachers live for: sunshine, smiles, and endless curiosity. By noon, the Buttercup class reached a wide clearing surrounded by tall pines. They stopped for lunch. Kids sat cross-legged in circles, pulling out their sandwiches, juice boxes, and apple slices. Some treated snacks. Some complained about crusts. A few giggled while chasing each other in slow little circles. The teachers watched over them, chatting casually, always with one eye on the children. Everything seemed ordinary, normal, safe, until they reached the fork in the trail. To paths, one wide and worn, clearly marked as part of the Willow Ridge Loop, the other narrower, overgrown, with a damaged sign. Someone had vandalized the arrows, scratched them out with a knife or something sharp. The group hesitated. Mr. Hensley stepped forward and offered to check the smaller path. Just a few meters, he said, wanting to confirm they were still on the correct route. Miss Wells nodded, adjusting the sun hat on a little girl beside her. Be quick, she told him with a smile. We'll wait right here. And so he stepped into the shadows of the narrower path, map in hand, compass still clipped to his vest. That was the last time anyone saw Gregory Hensley. It should have taken him 5 minutes, maybe 6. Mr. Hensley hadn't planned to go far. The trail veered a little more than expected, but he was confident. After a short walk, he confirmed it wasn't the right path. He turned back. As the familiar trees came into view, he expected to hear laughter, children calling out to one another, Miss Wells reminding someone to finish their sandwich, but the clearing was silent. At first, he thought it was a joke, a playful prank. The kids must be hiding behind trees, and Miss Wells was likely playing along. He smiled, called out once, then again. Nothing. The silence didn't sound right. His own voice seemed swallowed by the trees, muted like yelling underwater. A chill slid down his spine. He stepped into the clearing. The lunches were still there. Half-eaten peanut butter sandwiches, juice boxes punctured with straws, tiny backpacks resting neatly on the grass. A couple of jackets tossed over a fallen log, one of them inside out, as if pulled off quickly, but there were no signs of a struggle, no trampled leaves, no panic, no little footprints racing in any direction, just a quiet so unnatural, so heavy it didn't belong in a forest filled with life. He called out again, this time louder. Still nothing. He began to circle the clearing, eye scanning every shadow. No giggles, no rustling, not even the wind. The forest felt still. Too still, as if it was listening. By 1 p.m., Mr. Hensley was running, his breath ragged, legs buckling as he slipped on moss and roots. Branches whipped his arms, but he didn't stop. By 1:30, he reached the ranger station, sweating, stumbling, barely coherent. I can't find them, he repeated again and again. They're gone. They're all gone. Add to 15, local law enforcement was notified. By 3 o'clock, the forest was flooded with search teams. Search and rescue moved quickly. They formed lines. Grid by grid, they swept through the trees. Dogs barked, drones flew overhead, thermal cameras scanned the underbrush. By nightfall, nothing. No children, no Miss Wells, not even her bright red wool scarf. A scarf that should have been easy to spot against a sea of green. By 6 p.m., the sun had vanished behind the treetops. The air turned sharp and cold. Searchers moved carefully, their boots crunching over leaves, each step louder than the last. The only sound left was their own breathing. Even the animals had gone quiet, and the rescuers, even the experienced ones, began to feel it. The forest wasn't just empty. It was hiding something, watching. And whatever it was had taken 10 children and left no trace. The search began the moment that first frantic call reached authorities. A kindergarten class, 10 students, and 1 adult, had not returned from a scheduled nature walk. Within an hour, Larkwood Preserve was shut down. No one in, no one out. Every available unit was called in. By sundown, it had become the largest Search operation in county history. Volunteers came in from nearby towns. Local hunters, hikers, off-duty EMTs, everyone who knew the land or had boots to lend joined hands with forest rangers and police. They lit the woods with flashlights, called out names, posted signs, and set up a command center at the trailhead. But, hour after hour, there was only silence. What started as a routine field trip had now become a national emergency. And the mystery was just beginning. Search crews moved in lines, side by side, boots crunching over moss and leaves, calling out the children's names into the still, heavy air. Every call echoed back and answered. They combed creek beds, hollowed stumps, and cave mouths with urgency. But the deeper they pushed into the forest, the more unnatural the silence became. It wasn't just quiet, it was watching quiet. The kind that seemed to press in the farther they searched. On the second day, they found the first clue, a paper drawing caught in the twisted branches of a shrub, fluttered weakly in the wind. Then another, and another, a trail, crayon-colored sketches, childlike and innocent, sunshine, trees, birds, smiling stick figures, each one damp, but mostly intact. The kind of thing a child might proudly tape to a refrigerator. But here, they lay scattered, along the roots of trees, stuck to bark, half buried in leaves, spaced unevenly, as if someone had dropped them with intention, leading deeper into the woods. Was it a signal? A path? A breadcrumb trail? No one could say. 3 days in, near the muddy terrain of the western ravine, searches uncovered something else. Footprints, tiny ones, unmistakably children's, scattered, clustered together, leading across a shallow creek, up a narrow slope, and into another clearing. Then, they just stopped, mid-stride, no return path. No adult tracks, no sign of panic or flight, just nothing. Search teams stood there, eyes sweeping the forest floor, then the tree line, then the sky, trying to understand what could make a group of children vanish mid-step. What had happened in that clearing? What had ended there? On day 4, another item surfaced. At the edge of a ravine, resting gently beside a tree, was a torn backpack. It belonged to Miss Wells, the Buttercup class teacher. Inside, a juice box, a broken pair of glasses, a roll call sheet smeared with moisture, the first few names now unreadable, but there was no sign of blood. No torn fabric, no snapped branches or drag marks. No sign of a fall, nothing to suggest struggle. It was as if the bag had been placed there, deliberately, like someone wanted it found. As the days passed, the forest itself seemed to shift. Search teams reported unsettling behavior, radios cut out without warning. Dogs would bark at empty spaces in the trees, then whimper and refuse to move forward. Even the most seasoned veterans, men and women who had rescued hikers during floods, who had pulled bodies from snow-covered ravines, started asking to be reassigned. They didn't say why. They didn't have to, you could feel it in the air. Something in Larkwood was off. The official updates remained hopeful. We're pursuing new leads. We're expanding the search radius. We're not giving up. But behind the press conferences, something darker was brewing. Whispers turned into theories. At first, quiet speculation among the crews. Could this be a large-scale abduction? A coordinated human operation? Possible, but how? How could someone move an entire class without being seen? Without leaving tire tracks? Without a single scream heard in the woods? Others disagreed. They said it wasn't human. Couldn't be. No footprints, no trail, no goodbye. The children had disappeared completely, and with them, all logic. Some began to wonder if the answer wasn't on the surface at all. There were whispers of cave systems beneath Larkwood, unmapped tunnels, hidden crevices. Could the class have fallen through into something deep underground? But why hadn't anyone heard screaming? Why was there no sound at all? And then came the darker rumor. Locals began to speak up. Stories, old and half-forgotten, resurfaced. They said the forest was cursed. That something ancient lay beneath the ground, a presence that didn't like being disturbed. Some believed it was folklore. But others insisted people had gone missing in those woods before, never this many. And never so young, the official search continued. Every morning, fresh teams were deployed. Every night, they returned tired, empty-handed, and shaken. Days turned into weeks, 7 to be exact. 7 weeks of combing the woods. 7 weeks of unanswered questions. And every passing day chipped away at the fading hope that any of the children nor Miss Wells would be found alive. The optimism that once guided the search was slowly replaced with something else, a quiet acceptance and dread. The media eventually moved on. New headlines, new stories. The nation turned its eyes elsewhere, but the search crews didn't. They kept going, they kept hoping, they kept looking, and then something changed. A lone hiker, miles off the public trail, ventured into a dense and forgotten part of the woods. There, tangled in thick underbrush, he noticed something unusual, a strange indentation in the forest floor, a sinkhole, small, almost unnoticeable, like the earth had subtly collapsed inward. He might have missed it if he hadn't stepped directly into it. Suspicious, he called it in. Hours later, a new search team arrived. They inspected the depression, at first assuming it was just a natural dip in the ground, but as they began to clear away leaves and vines, the truth revealed itself. Beneath the moss and twisted roots was a narrow shaft leading down, almost vertical, so well hidden, it felt as if it had been waiting to be found. It wasn't just a sinkhole. It was an entrance, and the moment the team descended into the darkness, everything changed. The air grew cold. The sound of the forest faded, and the walls, smooth, damp, unnatural, didn't look like something formed by erosion. They looked carved. Every step deeper into the passage felt like walking into something ancient and wrong. As the lights flickered across stone and shadow, it became clear this wasn't just a hidden cave. It was an underground chamber. And what they found inside would rewrite the story completely, though no one could say who had done it. It was clear the chamber had been altered. This place wasn't just formed by time and stone. It had been touched, changed, used. In the deepest part of the underground passage, searchers found the first unmistakable evidence: scraps of clothing, bright, small, child-sized. Fragments of the kindergarten uniforms, torn and faded, caught in cracks between rock. Scattered around them were toys. Some trampled into the dirt, others dropped in haste, abandoned mid-play. But nothing was more disturbing than what marked the walls: tiny handprints, dozens of them, smeared across the cold stone surface. They weren't clean, they were dark, stained with something that wasn't just dirt. The size left no doubt these were children's hands. And the way they were placed, frantic, uneven, as if those who made them had been trying to escape or reach something. But despite the chilling evidence of presence, there were no bodies, no sign of Miss Wells, no trace of the 10 missing children. Yet everything in that place whispered one truth: someone had been trapped down there. For a long time, the air was thick, heavy, stagnant. It felt like no one had breathed it for weeks, maybe months. And when the discovery made headlines, the town's confusion turned to full-blown horror. How had the children ended up underground? What had they found down there? Or worse, what had found them? Speculation spread like wildfire. Some believed this was the work of a secret group, a hidden cult operating in the shadows, using the tunnels for unspeakable purposes. Others suggested the sinkhole wasn't natural, but a deliberate hiding place connected to a vast underground network that stretched far beyond the forest. Another theory proposed the land was once home to an abandoned mining site, long forgotten by locals. Had the class stumbled upon it by accident? Could they have wandered too far, fallen into a shaft, and become lost in its darkness? The possibilities were endless and terrifying, but one theory stood out, not because it was the most plausible, but because it was the most personal. What about Mr. Hensley, the science teacher who had led the trip and vanished with the children? Some began to wonder, what if he wasn't a victim? What if he had something to do with it? Parents recalled how he had grown distant in the days before the trip, how he seemed distracted, unsettled. Others mentioned he had recently taken an unusual interest in local maps, the history of Larkwood, and stories about forgotten underground structures. Had he been planning something? Had he discovered something he wasn't supposed to? And if so, why involve the children? Was he trying to show them something or hide them from something? The more people questioned his behavior, the more suspicious it seemed, and the biggest question of all remained: where was he now? Could Mr. Hensley have been involved in something more sinister? At first, the idea seemed far-fetched, but after the chilling discovery underground, and with no bodies, no answers, and no clear suspects, investigators had no choice but to consider every possibility. The pressure to solve the case was mounting. The nation was watching, and the town wanted answers. Authorities turned their attention to Mr. Hensley. Where had he gone? Why had he disappeared? The only adult on the trip, the one who had led the children into the woods. They began to dig into his background, his alibi, his history, but without concrete evidence, no one could prove anything. And so the theories continued to grow. Then came the sightings. In the weeks following the cave's discovery, people living near Larkwood began to report strange things. At night, they claimed to see figures moving between the trees, shadowy, silent. Some said they heard voices, whispers on the wind, too soft to understand. Others swore they heard children's laughter, faint and distant, echoing from deep within the forest. But every time someone went to investigate, they found nothing, just darkness, just silence. With each passing day, the mystery grew deeper. Had the children been taken? Were they trapped, or had something far worse happened? And what role, if any, did Mr. Hensley play? The discovery underground had changed everything, and now it was clear the story wasn't over. Not even close. This was just the beginning. The investigation reached a turning point. The case had grown cold, with no new leads, no trace of the missing class, and no signs of Hensley. But then, a breakthrough. Digging deeper into Mr. Hensley's past, investigators uncovered something that had somehow been missed years earlier. He had been quietly connected to a survivalist commune deep in the woods, a group known for its secrecy, its extreme independence, and its complete rejection of modern society. They lived in remote caves, cut off from the outside world. Locals remembered whispers about them, a closed-off group, protective, borderline paranoid. And for a time, Mr. Hensley had been one of them. This revelation set off alarm bells. Why had he kept this hidden? Why had he never mentioned his time with the commune? And most disturbing of all, had he used his knowledge of those caves to lead the class into something far more dangerous than anyone imagined? Was it all a tragic accident, or was this part of something deliberate? The police were now convinced this wasn't just a missing persons case. Something darker had happened. And whatever it was, it started long before that field trip ever began. The deeper investigators dug into Hensley's life, the clearer it became. This was never just about a teacher who lost his class. There was more. Much more. Rumors swirled that the survivalist commune Hensley had once been part of had never truly dissolved. Some members, locals whispered, still lived off the grid, hidden deep in the forest caves, far beyond what rangers and hikers ever reached. Was it possible that Hensley had never really left them, that the field trip was never meant to end at the creek, that the class had been led into something planned? Then everything changed. An anonymous call came in. The voice, shaky, disguised, claimed to know where the children were. Police scrambled. They followed the directions into the densest part of the forest, a stretch of wilderness that had remained untouched even after weeks of searching. What they found there was beyond anything they had imagined. Hidden under thick vines and years of undergrowth was a sealed cavern, its entrance boarded up with heavy, hand-cut planks, camouflaged so well it could have gone unnoticed for decades. As officers pried the boards away and stepped inside, a rush of stale, dusty air filled their lungs. But there was something else in the air too, something off, a heaviness they couldn't explain. And then they saw it. The walls were covered in children's drawings, crude but unmistakable, scenes of life underground. Images of children playing, eating, waiting to be rescued. Some sketches showed the outside world, trees, the sun, birds, but most were of caves and tunnels, twisting endlessly into darkness. The drawings weren't all old. Some ink was fresh, recently added, others had faded with time. But their message remained hauntingly clear. These were the drawings of the missing kindergarteners. A silent chronicle of where they had been kept, how long they had waited, and the hope that anyone would come. For officers standing in that cavern, one truth became impossible to ignore. The children had been down there, alive, hopeful, hidden right beneath their feet, which could only mean one thing. Mr. Hensley knew. He had been involved, not just as a bystander, but as a key figure in something far more sinister than anyone had dared imagine. Before authorities could make sense of it all, before they could interrogate or confront him, Hensley vanished. No trace. No goodbye, no signs of where he went. One moment he was there, the next gone. His disappearance was clean, calculated, as if he'd known the walls were closing in, and with him. The truth might have vanished forever. The investigation was tightening, the pieces were aligning, but all they truly had were fragments. Hensley's mysterious past, his hidden ties to the survivalist commune, and the haunting realization that he had never been alone in those woods. The truth was beginning to surface, but the questions still outnumbered the answers. Where were the children now? Had they been in that hidden cavern the entire time? Or had they been moved, taken even deeper into a world no one had dared to imagine? And most chilling of all, who or what was behind it all? The strings were being pulled by someone, or something, but from where and why? One thing was certain, Larkwood Preserve held secrets far darker than anyone had ever known. As the case dragged on, the emotional toll hit the town like a wave. Grief replaced hope, pain replaced questions, and silence replaced laughter. The faces of the missing children were everywhere. On lampposts, in store windows, across glowing news broadcasts. But in homes across the town. They had become something else, memories, empty chairs at dinner tables, unopened lunch boxes, drawings taped to refrigerators that would never be updated again. Every night, parents lit candles in the quiet of their homes, small acts of remembrance for the little ones they could no longer hold. A father placed his son's favorite toy car on the porch, one final offering for the child who used to race it across the kitchen floor. A mother stood frozen in the doorway of her daughter's room, the bed still neatly made, stuffed animals on the shelf collecting dust and sorrow without bodies to bury. There were no funerals, no closure, only aching emptiness and a grief that wrapped around the town like fog that refused to lift. The media, hungry for a narrative, turned the disappearance into something larger than life. They began to call them the Children of Larkwood Preserve, a title wrapped in mystery, etched in tragedy. The story became legend, an echo of innocence lost. Some painted the children as angels, others as victims of something unexplainable. News segments turned poetic. They spoke of ghostly whispers in the trees, of young spirits wandering the woods, forever waiting, forever watching. And so, every week, the town gathered. A small vigil was held at the edge of the forest. Candles flickered in the wind, casting soft light into the darkness that had taken so much. And at the center of it all, one simple gesture emerged, a sign, a message written in a child's handwriting, posted on a wooden stake near the trailhead. "We're still here." Some believed it was a cruel prank. Others believed it was real. But for the parents, for the community, for everyone who still carried the weight of what was lost, it was a reason to keep hoping, or a reason to never stop grieving. As the sorrow deepened, a symbol of mourning emerged in the heart of the town, a gesture so simple, yet unbearably powerful. Outside the school, a pair of shoes was placed for each missing child, but not a full pair, just one single shoe for each child who never came home. Some were impossibly small, tiny shoes belonging to toddlers who had only just learned to walk. Others were a little larger, worn sneakers, scuffed from playground races and games of tag that should have lasted a lifetime. Each shoe was tied with care, each one placed gently on the sidewalk, a silent row of grief, a memorial to what should have been. To the children who should have been laughing, running down school hallways, shouting in parks, Not lost, not swallowed by a forest that gave back nothing. As days turned to weeks, the line of shoes grew longer, each parent, facing the unimaginable, added to the collection, a quiet ritual of pain and love. Some wept, some whispered prayers, and some simply stood in silence, hoping that somehow, some way, their child could feel it, know they were still missed, still loved. But grief has its own sense of time. And slowly, the town began to accept a truth it had fought against for too long, that the children were not coming back. Their laughter, their futures, had been stolen, taken by something unseen, something no one could name or fight or understand. The memorials continued, candles still flickered in windows, but the feeling had shifted, hope had dimmed. What was once a desperate search was now a cold, aching silence. An entire year had passed, 12 long months since that ordinary field trip turned into the town's greatest nightmare. A cheerful group of kindergarteners and a teacher they trusted had boarded a school van and never returned. The vehicle had been found abandoned, its doors left wide open, belongings scattered as if dropped mid-step. No blood, no tracks, no screams, nothing. The initial search had been massive. Helicopters hovered above the treetops. Search crews swept the area with dogs, every inch of Larkwood Preserve combed and re-combed. And still, nothing. No trace, no closure, just a mystery that stretched into the shadows. The case grew colder by the week. Leaves dried up, the headlines faded, and the sympathy the town had once poured out began to go quiet. Not out of cruelty, but because no one knew what else to do. Grief lingered, hope flickered, and the shoes remained on the sidewalk, unmoving, unclaimed. The mystery of the missing kindergarten class had all but faded from headlines, a story that once gripped the nation, now whispered only. In passing. It seemed destined to remain unsolved forever, until one day, something surfaced. At a quiet construction site, less than 2 miles from where the original disappearance occurred, a crew member clearing debris stumbled upon something strange, a hollow tree, half split by time and weather. Inside, nestled among the rotting bark, was a crumpled piece of paper, childlike, worn, written in crayon, the message, "We're still here, please find us." Just like the first one, discovered nearly a year before, authorities were stunned. Another search was launched immediately. Teams were dispatched, drones scanned the area. Dogs tracked every trail leading away from the site, but once again, nothing. No children, no footprints, no signs of life, just the same haunting message, echoing through the woods like a voice long forgotten. The discovery raised more questions than answers. Had the children survived somehow? Were they living in the woods hidden, waiting, watching? Or was this something else, something darker, something that had been orchestrated from the very beginning? Some began to whisper again, old rumors stirred. Theories grew darker. Was someone playing a game? Was it a cry for help, or a cruel illusion? The families, already worn down by grief and silence, were left clutching to these notes like lifelines, but the reality remained unchanged. No new evidence, no suspects, no leads, only mystery, and the fear that whatever had taken those children was still out there, unseen, and touched, unstoppable. So where does that leave us? Who wrote the messages? Were they real? Were they a hoax? And most importantly, where are the children now? The case is still open. But time is running out. Could there be a break coming? Could the truth finally come to light? Or will the children of Larkwood remain a chilling legend of innocence, lost forever? Stay tuned for the next part of this ongoing investigation. Perhaps, just maybe, the answers we've all been searching for will finally begin to reveal themselves. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another update on this chilling mystery. And in the comments below, share your theory. What do you think happened? Could the missing children still be out there?